Hello, Ed.
Hey, Jim.
Ed, I'm going to start with just a little overview of our relationship and full disclosure of how we know each other and for how many years.
Yep.
For the benefit of everyone that's listening, my name is Jim Nestor. Retired from the New Jersey State Police. I was a civilian command staff member for 23 years and certainly got to know Ed Cetnar through his years of service with the state police, who went on to be very successful, attaining the second highest rank in the New Jersey State Police of Lieutenant Colonel. Since Ed has retired from the New Jersey State Police, took on another very full-blooded position as the Superintendent of Police for the Port Authority Police Department of New York and New Jersey. So with that said, I have a little background on Ed, but Ed, maybe we'll just start with you beginning. I always say that Ed Cetnar, when I first met him as a trooper, was one of those Navy SEAL troopers that went on to represent a very elite group in the New Jersey State Police called our Teams Unit, which basically was our Navy SEALs to the New Jersey State Police, providing some of the more dangerous and harder tasks, I would say, within the Division of State Police. And Ed was assigned to the Central Unit in the center of New Jersey prior to making rank and then moving, as I said, up to the second in command at the Deputy Superintendent position. So Ed, maybe just starting there, and then we can talk a little bit about your response as a Teams Unit member on 9/11, and maybe just a little bit about your career leading up to that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jim. And as you said, I was a New Jersey State Trooper for nearly 28 years, retiring at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, and was the Deputy Superintendent of Operations, which comprised of all the uniform components in the New Jersey State Police at the time. My career started off like any other trooper as a general road duty trooper. From there, I was on a tactical patrol unit for a number of years. And then after that, I applied for the Teams Unit, which, as you mentioned, is a very specialized unit in the state police. At the time, there was only 30 of us out of 3,000 that did that job. And basically, we were the SWAT team, we were the divers, we were heavy rescue, we were dignitary protection, high profile dignitary protection, heads of state, president if they came into New Jersey, things like that. Basically, we were the last line of defense for the state of New Jersey, with the capability, not only tactical, but also with emergency response capabilities. So I did that for almost 9 years. After that, I was sent on to a task force in the city of Newark, worked in the city of Newark for a period of time, and then was pulled into the Homeland Security branch, which was created in 2004. It was the largest reorganization in the New Jersey State Police. And I was assigned to the Lieutenant Colonel at the time, Lori Hannon Bell, to help facilitate all special operations and emergency management. From there, I went into special operations, emergency management, continued to achieve certain ranks, and ultimately was assigned as the Lieutenant Colonel and Deputy Superintendent, the #2 position for all of operations when I retired. So that culminated my state police career. I was the primary strategic planner for Super Bowl 48. I also did all the response and recovery security for Hurricane Sandy, all the major events that were going on in New Jersey, the Agudath Israel event, whereas in the history of the world, never have we had 90,000 of the Jewish faith in one place, and we did that in MetLife, and it was quite a security risk. And we were able to formulate a plan and pull that off successfully. So I have a number of high profile major events where I was the incident commander and principal planner on these things. So the experience that was afforded to me by the state and opportunities have been great. And Colonel Fuentes, who I worked under, was the person that had the faith in me to command these different positions. So as Jim said, currently I'm the superintendent of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Police Department, a very, very big task, being you're dealing with 2 different states. It's a bi-state agency with about 2,300 police officers. And we have all the airports, the bridges, the tunnels, the World Trade Center complex, the Port of New York and New Jersey, the Port of Brooklyn, just a host of high profile things, the bus terminal, the PATH system, which is train system, where you have just hundreds of thousands of millions of people coming through and traversing these facilities, which the Port Authority Police Department is responsible in securing. So I've been at the port for 7 years now, doing that, and it's quite a challenging task, coming from the New Jersey State Police as a trooper over to the Port Authority, where, like I said, it's a bi-state agency operated by both governors of New York and New Jersey. So it's a great opportunity.
So Ed, starting back at 9/11 and that event, and also I'm pretty sure because I kind of followed along with you in some of those other responses. Katrina down in New Orleans was also something I believe you were running one of the task forces that went down to that response. So 2 tasks here. One task was certainly your experience as the responder in terms of the teams unit, which you said you did almost 10 years. And then second to that would be these major responses that you had this oversight. I believe New Jersey and Michigan are the only 2 states where the state police agencies actually oversee the emergency management or Office of Emergency Management. Therefore, you were basically the second in command for the whole state of New Jersey at some point for these disaster responses that you did respond to. And I would guess that there's a difference between the 2 of those responses. One coming from your days as a teams unit, responding to specific incidents that were needed for your, like a SWAT response, things like that. And then second to that, the larger scale of a disaster response, and you've been involved with both. Could you just talk a little bit about both of them and what you've learned through that process as a young troop, and then as you got into supervisory positions, having to look after almost probably 1,000 to 1,500 troopers at some point, and now certainly 2,300 police officers come under your venue.
Yeah, that's 2 different, really different experiences. 9/11, I was the acting sergeant of the teams unit at the time in Central Jersey, and when the planes hit the towers, we were immediately dispatched by the governor to assist NYPD and Port Authority any way we can. So we mobilized immediately all our USAR equipment and all our heavy rescue equipment, and we were in New York within a matter of, I would say, 2 hours after the planes were hit. And as you know, you were there. It was a very chaotic scene. You didn't know what was up, what was down. The rescue efforts that were put on by the hundreds of thousands of people were absolutely amazing. From people from all over the country coming to do it. We particularly worked side by side with NYPD ESU and FDNY and a host of others, cutting steel, going into voids because we had that capability of looking to recover or possibly rescue, which we did not, anybody that may have survived. And unfortunately, we did not experience any of that. A lot of recoveries of different things, but that was an experience of a boots on the ground type of thing. But I was also a sergeant in charge of my 10 men that were there. But it was, as everyone knows, a pretty traumatic event for the country. Not knowing what was coming at us, that we were just attacked on our own soil in America, and that it was the police that now had to try and respond, recover, and protect all the critical infrastructure in New Jersey and New York. While that's going on, there's investigations that are happening that the FBI is doing, trying to uncover who attacked America with these planes. So while we were working on the pile, there were times we get pulled off the pile to respond back to New Jersey to execute raids where you had the terrorists harbored up in New Jersey in certain towns, and we would execute that. And then once we were done with that, we would be back on that pile. So that lasted for, a couple of weeks where we were going back and forth. So, that dynamic of, coordination, management, supervision, and looking out for the well-being of the members was critically important, because this is something that nobody ever experienced, unless somebody was in the military and may have been deployed overseas, would have been exposed to something like this. But for the most part, a lot of people, were never exposed to the type of death and destruction that we were seeing and what we were working on at that time. So that was, a really difficult time for everybody there. And I think it was probably the first time, I think your office, Jim, when it was created, actually responded and, was there for the troopers as a support mechanism for what they were dealing with and what they were seeing. So, that was critically important, because nobody ever really thought about those things, 20 years ago and 25 years ago, in the past, that it was just, your job, you went and you did it, and that was it. So, we see now 20 years later, there's still many lingering effects of folks, that have dealt with, responding to the Trade Center and the Pentagon and some of the other issues that go along with it. So the mental health aspect was something that was kind of new and implemented. And I think we carried it out after that, whether it was Katrina, whether it was Hurricane Sandy, it became part of the planning process, as we moved along. When you mentioned, Hurricane Sandy and, Katrina, I was a boss then, a lieutenant at one point, and then a major and lieutenant colonel. So the whole planning concept of that completely changed for me from a management standpoint, because now logistically you had to plan for everything using your experiences of what you were up against. I mean, you had wide scale devastation. I'll use Katrina down there, where we were asked to come down on an emergency management request, and they were asking anybody that could be really self-sufficient come down and operate. We were able to come up with a plan in a matter of, I would say, 48 hours with Colonel Fuentes' permission. And we created a plan where we mobilized 150 people immediately and took everything with us, all our equipment. We went down there. We sent advanced people down there, got a high school that we made basically our barracks and our quarters, set up all the bunks, and that was our home base for quite a period of time. And all we did was continue to go after all the unanswered 911 calls that were still in the queue after Katrina hit. And we went house by house and, cleared things out, and, again, dealt with a lot of death and destruction with Katrina. But our template that we had and that we created, I believe, is probably still used to this day. When, I know the state police, they mobilized to Puerto Rico. They have went to other different areas that have been impacted by hurricanes and devastation, where it's basically you break glass, blow off the dust on the plan, and assign the troopers and get in the cars and go. So again, that was something as a boss, we created, and it's something that, we're very proud of to this day, that the troopers can still use that model, and, they can get up and go. And I've actually used it in the Port Authority during Puerto Rico, where we send Port Authority police officers down there, and we use the same model that we developed in the state police. So those experiences have bode very well for us, both, me as an operator, boots on the ground, and, as a middle manager, and then a senior executive in a police department, both agencies right now.
Yeah. So Ed, if you don't mind me referencing just a few things I recall at 9/11, when we set up on the 12th down at the Javits Center, there was a moment when I was asked by the lead, Jim Riley, who was the team leader for USAR, if I could speak to the 80 plus USAR team members who had ants in their pants to get down to the down to the actual ground zero to start to work. I think what had occurred was there was an observation of a lot of other agencies sending people over that really had no plan, and they were just going to the pile, so to speak. And I can recall getting ready to, I'm being put on the spot to speak to the 80 that I've never met, in trying to keep them calm and look at their stresses and their emotions at that time, when I observed a round table with 8, I believe it was actually your unit, 8 to 10 teams unit members sitting at a table playing cards. You were literally dressed to go into any action. From my observation, being from the military, in the Army, you just looked like you were an attack team ready to go. Yet you were calm, collected, and the 10 of you were playing cards. Because, and I made that observation to the other 80, saying that that group down there that you're looking at, the reason they are set in that way is they've been trained to be patient and calm themselves prior to engaging into some, hard action. And I do recall that, and you and I talked about that later, and you said, Jim, that's what we do. If we were to be nervous and get upset and walking in circles, it probably wouldn't be a benefit for the duty that we have to perform. And I think that observation from then, Ed, when I knew you as a sergeant, all the way up to include when you're talking about the planning, and during those planning sessions, you were one of the first. I know with Lieutenant Colonel Malice, at one point you were a major, and you just said very openly in front of maybe 14 or 15 executives, hey, we need the group that comes down to make sure that the mental health of our troopers are good. And I can recall that happening to where then we were included at that point with those. So you would say, I'm just speaking openly here, that there was a difference when you started in your field of work to where then you've grown into this larger scale of leadership, where it's almost a must to have the mental health components and wellness components available to you.
Jim, absolutely, that is it is a must. It has to be there, because what's going on, in society as we continue to evolve, and, policing changes, the stresses that are put on police officers each and every day, they continue to mount. Let's just look at what's happened in the last, say, 20 months between the pandemic and the Floyd killing and the police reform that's been going on, especially in the Northeast quarter here, the things that are impacting police officers, where you have, government officials that, if, there's certain actions that a cop may take, whether it's inadvertently or not, trying to make an arrest, that they could be criminally charged and held accountable for certain things. And, when you start putting stresses like that on people, that, hey, every time you got to put your hands on somebody to take their liberties away by placing them under arrest, there's potential for violence. And, you have to not only protect yourself, but your obligation is to protect society. So, with that and the pandemic in the last 20 months, the stresses that have been put on the police officers are tremendous. And, it's something that we continue to address, that mental health aspect of that police officer. What can we do to make sure and ensure them that, there's an avenue for them to talk to? And, if there is a concern and if there is a problem, that there is a mechanism where we can help them cope, we can address, and hopefully we can resolve any, concerns that they have. So, from where we were 20 years ago to where we are now, that stigma of, a police officer confronting or talking to, a mental health expert, I think it's gone, and I think it's great. And I think there's still, areas we can improve upon, but I think we've broken down a lot of barriers with this.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Ed. And so, Ed, from the moments after 9/11, let's just say the first few years, I believe I'd seen you at many of the different anniversary celebrations, so to speak, at 9/11, probably from the first year. I think I even went over on one of the New Jersey State Police Marine boats with you.
Yep.
And almost every year, I'm guessing you were, certainly as the major and lieutenant colonel, you were involved in some of those moments when the anniversaries occurred. And then I'm guessing all the way through till you retired from the New Jersey State Police. And then maybe just tell us a little bit about, going from that and then having your own personal experience with some news that came to you through, your, I guess you were being provided, as I am, and anyone else that it's available to, that were at the World Trade Center, the health program that's provided. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about, those years that you were experiencing, going to the anniversaries, providing support for that, and then getting some news on your own that may have been a curveball.
Yeah. As you said, all through the anniversaries as a trooper, at the different ranks going to that, you understood, what was going on. But I will tell you this, I really didn't fathom the great impact that this had until I went to the Port Authority and started working there. And I got to learn more and more about that day and things that have happened, because the Port Authority owned the World Trade Center. Folks don't know that. So Port Authority was the police department in charge of the World Trade Center complex, and NYPD is there too, and New York State Police and others. But the Port Authority is the sole responder to the agency. So now that I'm there, I got to learn, 37 police officers from the Port Authority died that day. That is the single most ever, most officers dying in one single event in a day. So the Port Authority lost 37, PAPD, or I'm sorry, NYPD 23, and then 343 in the firemen. So, each year now at the Port Authority, obviously as the superintendent, I'm involved with, all these anniversaries and events. In the meantime, I've lost 14 additional people since then to 9/11 related illnesses.
Yeah.
So, it's something that doesn't go away. And one of the things that, I continue to do as the superintendent, and this is from my upbringing as a trooper, is history and tradition is everything. I make sure that, that moniker of never forgetting is always there in the agency. So, the support each year as the 9/11 anniversary comes up, and this was just a big one, the 20th anniversary, we make sure that we're continually in contact with, our 9/11 families and offering whatever support we can continue to provide to everybody. There's church services, there's, different events, honoring those that we lost to make sure that we never forget. While at the same time, we're educating the new police officers in the PAPD that some of them may have been 3-4 years old at the time and really not realize, what has happened. And, what I have done, since I took over, I kind of changed the methodology of this police department to a counterterrorism police department. We're the only agency in America that it's been attacked 3 times by terrorists, twice at the World Trade Center. So, our folks need to have that, preparedness and that mindset that, this can happen again. So, we continue to work closely with, our mental health experts to, make sure our cops, if they're, impacted or they have concerns or questions, that they, they make sure to reach out and, that help is available to them. Now, in the middle of all this, I went to the Port Authority in 2014. In 2016, I happened to be at an IACP event and didn't feel good. And, thought maybe I pulled a muscle or something like that. And then, after a couple of days, I realized that, your body, it doesn't feel like a pulled muscle. I go to the doctor, and long story short, they do a CAT scan, and they diagnosed me with stage 4 cancer, renal cancer, that I have a tumor on my left kidney, a little bit bigger than a softball, that has metastasized over into my right lung. So to say that out of left field this came, 16 years later, was quite a hit. It's stage 4. We all know there's no stage 5. They told me I was in very, very bad, in a bad way. That's exactly what the doctor told me. I'm in a bad way. And, they'll do the best they can, but there's a very, very small percentage of a chance that I will survive, any period of time. So I end up getting into Sloan Kettering, which has been absolutely phenomenal with me. Due to surgery to remove my kidney, and then we start going from there, different treatments, trials, and things like that, because there was really nothing that was going to cure this, where it has set in my lung, this tumor. And I am very happy to report I'm in year 5 that my doctors are completely amazed that I'm alive. They said there's no scientific reason that I'm here, because the original diagnosis was, a short period of time. And, right now I am in no cancer treatment. I'm monitoring a lot of things. There's a lot of side effect issues that have happened to me from pulmonary and different things associated with the immunotherapies and the chemotherapy, but I'm still on this side of, you know, the sunshine, seeing that. And so, I go to work every day. I do what I got to do. I lead this agency. It giving me more drive now, knowing that there's a mission involved with this. And never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be leading the agency in the place where, as a trooper, I traveled to New York to do heavy rescue, and now got cancer because of it.
Yeah.
So it's so ironic how, we say God's a mad scientist sometimes in some of the things that happen, but
Yeah.
like I said, it was just 5 years, that I was diagnosed, and we're doing okay right now. So, to talk about everything coming, you know, uh, full circle, it's amazing. The folks at Rutgers, Dr. Udison with her program
Yeah.
that treats the World Trade Center folks, that mental health aspect is there for everybody to talk to. I know, anytime they ask for me to speak, I speak and give experiences and stuff like that, and try and, you know, share with people that, hey, you can survive.
Yeah.
There is a mental toughness. There is something that is said that if you won't quit, you can carry on. You can be strong and go about it. I know that it'll get me at some point. I'm not I'm not naive to that fact, but right now, I will fight as hard as I can, as long as I can, until this thing takes over. But as they said, I'm so much further than where they thought I would have been
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
That's
So
great.
obviously
That's great
something's
news.
going right
Yeah,
now.
that's great news. That's great news. So Ed, with the personal experience then, and then the openness certainly for mental health and talking to people, and then I know you as a leader that you take every advantage of speaking openly to groups, certainly in law enforcement, about that stigma, because as you mentioned earlier, that stigma from 20 years ago, it is almost gone. I mean, it may not be 100% gone, but it's getting there. And I guess from your role now, you get a bird's eye view of some of the younger generation. Like you said, you want them to learn and see the tradition, yet you also know that they're coming through a training process that's different than your training process was 30 years ago. So
Yep.
you still are aware of that. And I'm guessing you have some policies and procedures that you look at as the commander now of the 2,300 officers for training, for all those things. You do continue to look at those issues.
Yes. Part of the police reform last year that came up, particularly in New York City, and some of the measures that were put in place by the lawmakers in the city were pretty drastic. And some of it had to deal with, mental health, and, dealing with folks with mental health, not including the cops. So, we had policies in place with those things. And, one of my concerns was, well, what about our police officers? They're the ones that are being confronted with this each and every day. They're the ones that are getting bricks and bottles thrown at them. They're the ones, that are being spit on, and, people calling them, every name in the book. And, we tell them, it used to be, hey, that's your job. That's what you're expected to do. You got to take it, and that's it. Well, now, they know that, hey, what's on your mind? Let's talk about this. What do you see? What do you feel? How can we help you? And, I think we approach it in a way, and some of our folks that I deal with on our side with mental health is, it's more of a conversation, just getting involved with people. And I know you did this, Jim, because there were many times where, me and you were working together, and I would probably be asking you a question, not even realizing I was having therapy with you at that time by asking that question. And then you were giving your perspective on things.
Yeah.
And, as you get older and you realize, okay, that's
Yeah.
what that was that about. And, we try to carry that over. And,
Right.
it's just, something that we want the younger folks to understand. It's okay to ask us, if there's a problem. It's okay, whether it's at home, whether it's with sick children, parent, whatever, or it's the stresses of this job.
Yeah.
We're seeing that people don't want to take this job anymore.
Yeah.
It's going through that cycle where, you can't get people to take the job. And that'll come around full circle. It'll correct itself, but
Yeah.
it's a very challenging time, for a police officer. And, I can't say enough, about the mental health aspect that, every agency out there really needs to keep an eye on their folks. And, if it's predictable, it's preventable. When those red flags are up, there's something there, you better pay attention to it. And, you better identify people that, let your bosses know, watch these kids, see how they're acting, see what's going on in their lives. Because when you send them out there for 8 hours, you're kind of holding your breath, hoping you send everybody home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure that they're well prepared. And, so we as an agency in the port, we're very serious about, the mental health aspect for the well-being of our officers, and want to make sure that, they're fully aware that there's opportunities and, things out there for them to take advantage of.
Yeah. So Ed, I, again, having the advantage of knowing you, and knowing your system of leadership, you've surrounded yourself. I know Lou Clark is one of your commanders, your deputy superintendent. So as the superintendent, have you found that surrounding yourself with that leadership and making sure that the leadership does know the support systems and know the importance of safety and wellness for those officers, and not just from that level, the executive level, but all the way down through your sergeants, your lieutenants, and unit leaders?
Yeah, that's really, that's a message that, the Port Authority is kind of unique, where I came from the outside, Lou from the outside, and then a certain amount of command staff, a large majority of the command staff came from outside agencies. Because of contractual issues, folks wouldn't take a promotion above the rank of lieutenant, because of longevity and different contractual protections. So the agency was forced, before I got there, to go outside and start bringing commanders in from other agencies.
Okay.
So I have, I think right now, maybe 5 command staff, and that is from captain and above, that are original Port Authority police officers. So the rest of them are troopers, NYPD, Newark PD, MTA,
Okay.
folks from different agencies that have
Sure.
come in. So we bring a completely different perspective into this agency, while we work with the folks that have, grown up in the agency, and
Yes.
try and bring our experiences into them, and work with them, and, basically advancing, the mission of the Port Authority, while enhancing the capability of every officer. So that message is clear from me on down. I meet with the union presidents. We'll talk about this. The PBA is a very, very strong union in the Port Authority. They have a gentleman by the name of Pete Colleen that, Pete is a mental health expert. He's
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. I speak to him constantly, and he's on board with whatever I need to do, and is willing to help out, whatever we need to do. And, we tell our folks all the time, this is where you get in touch with them. This is how you get in touch with them. And that guy will answer the phone anytime, any day, to help the police officers. So, like we said, that stigma is going away, where folks are apprehensive of picking up the phone and calling and saying, hey, I got a problem. What do you think about this? Because I don't know what they thought was on the other end of the phone.
That's right.
Or I think it
Yeah.
was, if somebody found out, they thought you were weak,
Yeah.
or you couldn't handle it. But I think we're well past that now. And
Yeah.
I think folks know that the intention is basically to protect everybody, and, get them home at the end of the day, and have them as a functional parent, husband, wife, husband or brother or sister. So those are important things. And, I think as the days go on, the months, the years, we're getting better at it. We're really getting better at it. And it was something that was ignored for a long time. And, I know where we were in the state police when I came in the late 80s, and where we were after 2000, and where they are now. And,
Yeah.
the strides and advancements are huge.
Yeah.
So, we've had major events that we responded to, over the last, the 14 years. I was there from 2000 2014 when I left, and now that have continued on the last 7 at the port. So, major events. And that's important, that folks know that connectivity is there for help.
And Ed, when there's days you go to work, and I'm sure you go over into the World Trade Center area, and see the memorial, can you talk a little bit about how that gets you, I guess, with some pride in seeing what that value is, and maybe even seeing, because you've lost 37 members and now that other number 14 through some cancers over the years, how that gives you more opportunity to provide that openness for memorial, not just memorial, but resiliency. Moving, your officers see how resilient that is, and people come from all over the world to see that memorial, and how they get an opportunity to see the Port Authority Police providing some support and safety there, yet resiliently.
Yeah, that's very well put, because, I have an office over at the Trade Center that we go into from the New York side, and then on the Jersey side, we have police headquarters, but we're over there all the time. And, that is one of the things that every police officer assigned to that World Trade Center complex knows, that is the most sacred ground that they could be protecting. Because of all the folks, not only the police officers and firefighters, but the civilians too, that died on that day there, that is sacred ground. And we're there to protect that ground. It means something to each and every one of us. I know when I get out of the car and I get over there, first thing I think of is my own, fight and struggle with cancer right now. That right over there, that's where I worked, and I know where it was. And, I was on that pile and worked at, and that's how I contracted my illness. But, it gives you, even more passion, and I don't want to say pride, but it kind of does that. Hey, we're still here, we're still fighting, and we're still protecting, what's ours. And, America got hit, but we bounced back, and, we'll continue to do that. And I try and instill that in all the members of the force, that, hey, we're going to be attacked again. We know it's going to happen. December 17th, we had a suicide bomber go off at the footsteps of the bus terminal. Halloween, and that year we had the West Side Highway, just, a couple hundred yards down the road from the World Trade Center. Gentleman in a U-Haul truck ran people. So it's always around us. And, we're always, educating our folks and trying to keep them up on the best intelligence, and, working with our partners, whether it's NYPD, the National Guard, New York State Police, Jersey on the State Police on the Jersey side, all the different agencies, because nobody can do it by themselves. So, it's a constant, I guess it's a chess game to make sure that we put our pieces in the right place. And, hopefully we get lucky, and, our surveillance and, our intelligence components are able to uncover any possible, attacks or threats against us. And that's basically how we operate each and every day, under high profile intelligence.
So, Ed, I guess I'll just leave with this note that most people may not know. As proud as I am of your courage, and certainly your leadership that I've known since you were sergeant, I also know that the commander that day of 9/11 was a former New Jersey State Police Lieutenant Colonel, who was the Superintendent of Police that day, who lost his life that day. So again, all these connections that certainly show your courage, and not just through what you're doing with the cancer, but your courage in taking a position and a role on that's so important to you for the 2300. That's my knowing of you, that's very important to you, that those 2,300 officers that you do command or sit in that position, that you continue to look at their safety and well-being, to include their mental health.
Yep. Like you said, Superintendent Marone, that day, he was retired from the state police and was the superintendent of Port Authority. He ran into those buildings, to help save countless lives. And, unfortunately, he was in the towers when they collapsed and lost his life. So, as a fellow trooper, having the opportunity to lead this agency, it's important to me, and it's important, to protect the men and women that go out there each and every day. And, not be, for me, not to be cognizant of what the needs are of each and every police officer, that that is something that, I cannot afford to let happen. I need to know what's happening out there. I need to know, what's bothering the men and women, what tools in the toolbox do they need, what can we do to help them? You go to these different events and now you see these young guys, with children and, babies and stuff like that. And you think
Sure.
about the 37 that perished that day and,
Yeah.
who lost. I have a couple police officers that their dads were killed on that day. They are now legacy, Port Authority police officers with children. They grew up without their father. So, those are a stark reminder of what's important and, what we need to do to make sure, we're protecting, not only society, but, our families and the members that are out there doing that job each and every day.
Ed, you were always the best and you're still the best for me. So I can't thank you enough for your openness and honesty here and leadership. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it. It's always an honor to work with you.